Welcome back inside the lab, everybody, and thank you for tuning in for Wednesday's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Steele and Flip. On today's episode, you can expect more of what you're here for: picks, bets, predictions, and breakdowns of everything that's happening between the Tampa Bay Lightning and Colorado Avalanche. It's Game 4, people. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You heard the music, people, and you know what time it is. It is time for the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Make sure you check us out across all platforms you find your favorite content. We are free and available on such platforms as Spotify, Apple Music, and everywhere you get your hottest content. So thank you for hitting the subscribe, follow, dropping comments, reviews, hitting the DMs, all of the above. Steele and I appreciate that. You know the drill. On today's episode, people, more of the same, more of the hot content you're here to hear. Ooh, I like that, Steele. But anyway, Wednesday, Game 4. Lots to talk about today, Steele. A couple of big injury concerns coming up around the break. Big-time bets to wrap the show, of course. We're still hitting a couple winners. It's a little hit and miss, but we're hitting at least one or two every single night. So stay tuned for that. But realistically, Steele, off the top, little bit of a breakdown of what we saw in Game 3. We're teeing up Game 4 because at the end of everything, and I like to say that a lot, but it's true because I'm wrapping this up already, we have a new series, my friend, and I'm very intrigued to see the response from the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, look, this is more of the same from what we're gonna highlight. The good and the bad from Game 3 for both the Colorado Avalanche and the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm excited to see what they bring for Game 4 as well. They definitely did not expect a 6-2 beating from the Tampa Bay Lightning, to say the least, and that's probably the first time in this postseason so far that they've really been put back on their heels in a playoff game. But there's two things I really want to highlight, and you and I have done a great job at highlighting them so far throughout the series. The first one to me are the block shots and the shot attempts. The Avalanche outshot the Lightning 39-32 in the game, but were out-blocked 27-12. Those are very, very significant numbers. I explained and gave some reasonings why the block shots are a big part of the game. And if you're not getting in the lane, giving your goalie the free lane to see the puck and where it's coming from. So the block shots were a huge mismatch in Game 3 for the Avalanche, just not getting up there to the point, letting the shots get through to Darcy Kuemper and eventually Pavel Francouz, as we saw Kuemper get pulled in the game.
Yep.
But the second thing I want to highlight, and you've talked about this a lot, Flip, is the power play, the special teams. Mm-hmm. The Avalanche power play is running at 45% right now. 5 for 11 in 3 games of the Stanley Cup Finals. And the Tampa Bay Lightning, their power play running at 8%. They're 1 for 12 in 3 games of the Stanley Cup Finals. They've had more opportunities than the Avalanche, but cannot capitalize. I do want to highlight, or do want to say, they did a great job at keeping the Avalanche to the outside and giving them 0 opportunities 5-on-5.
Those are some of those underlying numbers, Steele, that, I mentioned that the Tampa Bay Lightning fans should be concerned about what they're seeing on the ice. And yes, big bounce back performance in Game 3. There's no doubt about that. But some of those numbers that you just mentioned make me believe that they still need to tighten up because, look, they did win 58% of the faceoff draws. That's one of the numbers that I wanted to highlight from Game 3. 58% on the faceoff dot gives you the puck a lot more than your opponent, and that's a difference. But what's going to catch up to them, Steele, and you mentioned the power play, and another number I'm going to mention is the giveaways. Colorado has seemingly been all over Tampa Bay, and even in Game 3, Lightning have a -4 giveaway disadvantage, a.k.a. giving up the puck a lot more than the Colorado Avalanche. That's one of those things that I've noticed in the game so far. Colorado smothered them in the first 2 games. They were all over it. They let it get there a little bit at the start of the game, and then really the depth of the Tampa Bay Lightning took over. But that's what I wanted to highlight there very quickly, Steele, because I do think what it comes down to is the depth on either side, because we saw Game 1, Game 2, depth scoring got it done. Game 3, Depth scoring gets it done for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Anthony Cirelli, Nick Paul, Pat Maroon, Corey Perry. That's going to be hard to stop if you're the Colorado Avalanche, if they can continue to roll like that. But I really do think, Steele, we're in for a 7-gamer. I keep saying that. I think these two teams are just going to keep going blow for blow.
Yeah, and I think that's what really got the Tampa Bay Lightning going after that Anthony Cirelli goal. A fantastic play by him to accept the puck off his left skate, bring it up to his hockey stick, and then obviously the accident, but purposely did the Kucherov to fool Darcy Kemper. But look, that's exactly what Anthony Cirelli needed, something to get him fired up, and he deserved that goal because he's been playing some stellar hockey the last couple of games, and that's really what got the Tampa Bay Lightning going as well, tying the game up in quick fashion as well. So again, highlighting the depth players, Pat Maroon, Corey Perry, Ross Colton, those guys stepping up in big ways and finally getting their first power play goal of the Stanley Cup Finals as well.
Look, we're going to continue to highlight some of these things. We mentioned the depth scoring, but one of the things we're going to talk about right around the break is a couple of significant injury concerns for the Tampa Bay Lightning, including with, those bottom lines in Nick Paul. He seemed to favor an injury near the second half of Game 3, making regular trips back and forth from the locker room. We're going to talk about that. Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, that's all coming up around the break, including stay tuned for big time bets because I have a feeling Steele has a couple of hot ones up his sleeve for y'all. And thank you for making us your first listen every single day. And I got to tell you about Rock Auto. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing makes and models, it's almost impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock everything that you need. Don't stand in line or endure all that intimidating questioning about your car or the parts you need when you can go to rockauto.com at home or in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto, a family-owned business serving do-it-yourselfers like Steele and I for over 20 years. Rock Auto's prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything you could need from brake parts, tail lamps, to even their new line of carpeting. Go explore their easy-to-use website today and find all of your auto part solutions. Go to rockauto.com right now for all the parts for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that Steele and I sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts you will ever need at rockauto.com.
Thank you for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Don't forget, we are free and available on all podcast platforms, which also includes YouTube. So hammer the subscribe button and the follow button. And thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. And like Flip said, a lot of injuries to deal with in the Stanley Cup Finals and throughout the postseason. A lot more for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point. You mentioned Nick Paul as well. On the Colorado Avalanche side, not really dealing as much, but of course, one of their stars, Nazem Kadri, still out of the lineup. But I did see a clip of him practicing, working on his mobility, his hand movement. Not some hard shots, but he's getting back in there. So, let's get right into it with the injuries. The big one, of course, for the Tampa Bay Lightning, Nikita Kucherov.
Yes, and you and I discussed this a little bit off air. These cross-checks seemingly becoming a little bit more regular to that area of the body, right above the hip, right when there's not a lot of padding, really laying a pretty vicious cross-check there. Taves takes a penalty. Tampa's obviously not happy about it. They call it a dangerous play. First of all, before we talk about impacts of potentially these guys missing or whatnot, Steele, I want your take on the hit itself. I've watched it a few more times here. The more that I watch it, the more that it does seem that he really does try to almost put all his weight down onto the cross-check. And maybe it doesn't look vicious, but it definitely, the intent seemed to be there. Do you think it's a dangerous play?
Yeah, it was a dangerous play, and I don't think it was as vicious as this incident that I spoke to you about off the air too, but this really reminded me of Robert Bertuzzo of the St. Louis Blues a couple of seasons ago, cross-checking Victor Arvidsson when he was a part of the Nashville Predators organization, twice in the back, in that lower area, right above the hips, like you said, where there's not a lot of padding. And like John Cooper said, players know what they're doing. And we just saw this in a couple of games ago in the Stanley Cup Finals. I sent you a video over Instagram. Yep. Corey Perry, and I forget who he was wrestling with on the ice, but they were wrestling on the ice. Yeah, and so he tries to get up, and he puts his knee on Compher's ankle. he knows what he's doing, but he's acting like it's an accident. And it's the same case in this scenario. It wasn't as vicious as that Robert Bertuzzo hit that I just explained, but it was still on purpose. It wasn't as vicious, but it was a vicious and dangerous play. And he knew it was to one of their top competitors who has already been struggling with some injuries.
The one thing we know we will see in Game 4, Steele, regardless of what the lineups look like, it's going to be a major response from the Colorado Avalanche. This team is far too good to stay down on the mat for very long, and I'm not talking or giving away predictions just yet. You got to stay tuned for those. But the Colorado Avalanche will respond. You know that they will be better in Game 4. The talent on this team is just too good. This is elite level stuff that we're seeing. And, we talked a lot about it coming into this final, and we're already seeing a truly special one, in my opinion. If we can continue to see 7 and 8 goals in each game, Steele, this is a fan and degenerate gambler's dream here. So let's not get that twisted at all for a second. But what is a fact is factor in that better performance and a response that I expect from the Colorado Avalanche and a couple of key injuries here to the Tampa Bay Lightning. If Nikita Kucherov cannot go, the odds on the Colorado Avalanche for the game are going to shift pretty significantly, because maybe let's just talk about Kucherov specifically and his impact on this team. Former Hart Trophy winner has been nothing short of sensational, Steele. He leads the team with 26 points, 19 assists, and he is special, a really special player. And I think that, man, if he can't go, I don't know what you think, but I'm leaning Colorado heavy in Game 4.
If he can't go, and that's something to keep an eye on, especially for your big-time bets, but if he can't go, yeah, it leans heavily in the Colorado Avalanche's favor, especially as the other players, too. Braden Point, questionable for Game 4. Nick Paul still dealing with injuries. Obviously a lesser player, but still vital and still important to the lineup nonetheless. So something Tampa Bay really is going to have to deal with, and everything that we're going to have to keep an eye on as degenerate gamblers.
Thank you, sir. And we'll leave it at this. 7 goals and 19 assists in 20 postseason games including 3 assists against Colorado for the Cooch. 29-year-old left the game on Monday near the end of the 6 minutes left in the third period. And John Cooper had this to say today on Cooch, quote, "As I sit right now, I think he can play tomorrow, but I'm not Cooch. If I know him, he's sitting here thinking the same thing, but we'll see what the doctors say. I think so. I hope so." To me, that sounds like he's dealing with something relatively significant, because at this time of year, the coaches don't play around with this stuff. They either don't talk about it or they kind of tip their hands a little bit. So that was a tough play. We know he's been banged up over the last number of seasons, and we know the track record on this Tampa Bay Lightning team, the body count, the number of games. This is going to start adding up, and I just hope that he can go, because I want to see the best of both teams going against each other. And without Kucherov and Braden Point, that offensive bite for the Tampa Bay Lightning just all of a sudden starts to look a lot less ruthless.
Yeah, and if they're not in the lineup, it might make my bets look a little bit worse than they actually are. But for those bets, you have to be going to betonline.net. They are your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, including this year's NHL Stanley Cup Finals and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And it's also the fastest and easiest way to check on all your other favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. Bet online, where the game starts. Thank you for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Don't forget, we are free and available on all podcast platforms, which also includes YouTube. So hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the love and support out there. And thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Flip, like you said from the top, it hasn't been bad. It hasn't been great, but we're hitting, every night we're going 1 for 3, 2 for 3. So we're still hitting a couple every night, but not meeting our expectations. for the big time bets.
That's okay, because this is a grind and it is a marathon. And in the words of the great Nipsey Hussle, the marathon continues, baby. And it continues all playoff season long until the end and all the way through the summer, Steele. Steele and I are in the lab all summer long, cooking up everything that you need to absolutely dominate your fantasy drafts. Dynasty, Rotis, head-to-head, daily fantasy, whatever you're laying down, trust me, smash that subscribe button. Don't miss a single episode, breakdown, or preview. And Steele, speaking of breakdowns and previews, big time bets, baby. We're bouncing back. You're right. The other night, I was 1 for 2. Steven Stamkos anytime goal salvaged the night. I also had Gabriel Landeskog on a first-time anytime goal scorer. Didn't put it on the show, but we'll still take it. And I'll hit you with my first pick right away, because as much as those losses are huge for the Tampa Bay Lightning, there's one thing that it means to me, and he needs to step up again, and it's Steven Stamkos. And I'm going right back to the well, because this guy steps up in the clutch. He's Captain Clutch. I love this guy's leadership. He does it on the ice, off the ice. He does it in the dressing room. He does it in the community. I absolutely love Steven Stamkos as a player and as a person. Gushing a little bit here. Give me a Steven Stamkos anytime goal again. Good odds on it the other night. Good odds on it again tonight. That's not my lock of the night, Steele, but I still do have 2 picks for you. So why don't you hit me with a couple of yours?
Well, my first pick actually is anytime assist from Steven Stamkos as well.
Nice.
He does need to step up in a big way for game 4, again, like we saw in game 3, but especially if Nikita Kucherov and Brayden Point are out of the lineup. He needs to step up and be that facilitator and be making the plays for his teammates with whoever he's playing with, because we know he's going to be playing some big minutes for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the odds are great. Plus 110 for any time assist from Steven Stamkos. I'm taking that every single time.
Nice.
And I'll jump right into my second pick as well.
Please.
I'm taking the Tampa Bay Lightning on the money line at -105 currently right now. This might change with obviously closer to the game when we find out if Kucherov and Point are out of the lineup or in the lineup. But as of right now, I'm feeling Tampa Bay for game 4, taking them on the money line, and I'll save my lock of the night for after you send your second pick.
See, this is just it, Steele. And I had hammered the first 2 games over, and that banged. And then I started to get tricky, and I went with the under in game 3. And it just, they blew the doors off that one pretty early. What I'm seeing and what I'm expecting, though, we saw the Tampa Bay Lightning clamp down after, a shaky game 2. I expect the same thing to happen from the Colorado Avalanche and clamp down after a shaky performance in game 3. And I think we finally see our first true Stanley Cup game. Tight scoring, very, very gritty. It's already been gritty, but even more tight checking. There's going to be some responses from the Victor Hedmans of the world for that hit on Nikita Kucherov. This game is going to get very gritty, I think, from the jump. So give me all of that. I'm taking the under again. I'm going back to it, Steele. Under 6.5. It's right now sitting at 6. I expect it to go up, and if not, I'm going to tease it for a lesser odd. But give me the under 6.5, and I'm a little bit nervous for obvious reasons, but I'm going to stick to my guns on it and go with what I expect to happen, which is also what I'm going to say for my lock of the night. If you like, I can give it to you now.
Well, I wanted to say I would be very comfortable with taking the under in this game as well, especially if it's at 6.5. I do as well believe that this game is going to be a lot more physical, a lot more tighter, and a clamp down defensively.
Thank you.
And I see this game. I said the Tampa Bay Lightning on the money line. I see this ending up as a 3-2 or a 4-2 with an empty net for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yes. And do you have another pick for me, or did you hit me with all 3?
I do have my lock of the night, but I'll say that for after yours.
Okay. Well, it's hard for me to throw out a lock of the night on the Tampa Bay Lightning after hearing some of these key injuries, but I'm going to do it anyway, Steele. Give me the Tampa Bay Lightning on the money line for my lock of the night. I expected this to be a 7-game series. I expected Tampa to be coming out on top in that 7-game series. The first 2 games definitely did not make me feel good about my pick. I'm still very nervous about that pick, but I got to stick to my guns, and that means the Tampa Bay Lightning win tonight at home. And like I said a couple episodes ago, you're not out of it until you lose at home, and no one's lost at home yet, so we'll see what happens. But give me the Tampa Bay Lightning on the money line, currently at -110.
I'm not sure I would make that the lock of the night, especially with the injury scares out there. But kudos to you. Kudos to you. I'll bow down if it hits. But we both have the Tampa Bay Lightning on the money line anyway, so I hope it does hit for both of us. But my lock of the night, and this is for sure a lock of the night, Mikko Rantanen, anytime assist, -140 right now, lock of the night. He's doing exactly what Nikita Kucherov is doing for the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's facilitating on the power play, 5-on-5. He's just doing it all for them. I said this the other game as well. Take him on anytime assist or anytime power play point as well. Both of those hit, obviously, because he had 2 power play assists. Yeah. I'm going back to the well for Rantanen. Anytime assist, -140 for the lock of the night.
He's looked really good, Steele, and he might be up there as one of those underrated, like top 10 underrated players, because I still think he doesn't get enough credit. Very slippery player, very good hands, speed, and, we're just in for another treat tonight at the end of the day. There it is, me saying it again, because, hey, man, like I said, the first 3 games have been awesome to watch, and that's sometimes hard for me to say because I am such a jaded Toronto Maple Leafs fan. Sometimes I get very disinterested in these finals. Case in point, last year, I think I watched, maybe 7 or 8 periods of the Stanley Cup final because I just could not bear to see those Montreal Canadiens skating around out there. That's a whole other episode. That's a whole other ball of wax that we're not getting into today.
Look, for Mikko Rantanen, though, it's very easy to overlook a guy like that, especially when he's playing with Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar.
Good point.
But what you shouldn't overlook is the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Ooh. Thank you for making it your first listen every single day. But for your second listen, you have to check out Locked On NHL. From the first round matchups to each Stanley Cup kiss, Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. You're going to hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. Just like this podcast right here, you can find it every Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. It's free on all podcast platforms and also YouTube. So hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Flip and I appreciate it so much. And we appreciate you for tuning in for today's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.